Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. And uh, we are the Smart Elections Election Protection Forum, and I am Lulu Freistad. I'm the executive director of Smart Elections, and
And I am Bennett Smith, Shelby County Election Commissioner and co-host and technical advisor for Smart Elections.
we are delighted to have you with us. And we are also delighted that this evening we have ASL interpreters, and they are courtesy of a wonderful organization, the Center for Disability Rights. You can see their website there, cdrnys.org. Totally encourage you to check that out. We are trying to build very strong bridges with the disability rights community. It's very important for election security organizations and disability rights organizations to be working together because we have a lot of interests in common in that we want everyone to be able to vote and participate in the elections. And so we want the elections to be fully accessible, and we want them to be fully secure. So everyone's vote can be cast in the way that they intended it, cast as counted. No, counted as cast,
Counted
counted
as
as
cast.
cast, right. Flipped it on you. Just checking if you're paying attention there, Benny.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. It's very important that people's votes are counted accurately, is what we're saying. Everyone's votes. And so that's why we are developing such strong relationships and building bridges between communities. And so part of having ASL interpreters is to welcome voters and members of the public with disabilities so that everybody feels included. So the first interpreter that we have with us tonight, this is Alana Palardi. Did I say that right, Alana?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, great. And we are also going to do visual descriptions for our guests who aren't able to see. Benny, you get to go first.
All right. Benny Smith, black, male, nappy hair, um, purple and white block shirt, standing in front of a lot of computer screens. There's six computer screens behind me.
You have the opposite of nappy hair. Your hair is like smooth and like sort of
No, I
short.
need some help today.
I would never call it nappy. My husband has
I'm
nappy hair
usually a
now.
little bit better before a show, but
My husband's hair is like growing crazy. I'm like, we're trying to figure out if he's going for the Cornell West look or maybe something a little bit more like Cowboy Bebop.
okay, he working on something then. Yeah.
You are not nappy. Okay, I'm
He's
sorry.
in transition.
I'm Lulu Freistad. I am a very pale woman. I very rarely get out into the sun anymore. I'm in front of my computer all day. Pale. I have a sort of long, thin face, big smile, kind of a long nose, long hair, long, and brick wall behind me, white earbuds, a brown suit jacket. Alana, do you do a description? Sure, go ahead.
I'm sure I can. I'm the interpreter. I'm wearing a black shirt and a blue background, and I've got glasses and brown hair.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're so glad to have you here. Okay, so we're going to rock and roll. We have a lot of information for you. I'm very excited about this program. It is such an important program. We are talking tonight about audits, and this is our best of audits. And if we have a little time, I'm very hopeful we are going to slip in a little information about open source software and ranked choice voting, which also have to do a little bit with accuracy and sort of the way that we count the votes. So I thought that was fair to slip it in. And we want to tell you a little bit about our organization first. Smart Elections is a young organization. We're about 2 years old. We are dedicated to elevating election reform to an urgent national priority. That is because it needs to be. We are seeing now, as our democracy is on red alert, as you see quotes in the press like this is a 5-alarm fire and democracy is nearing the midnight hour, we know that we need to really focus on our elections. And I'm actually going to play a clip that I made. It's a little sneak preview, a little trailer of a video that we're going to be airing for our fundraiser, in which I'll talk a little bit about how urgent things are. But Smart Elections is dedicated to bringing as many people into the process as possible, inclusive, fair, secure, accurate elections that are publicly verifiable. And we have a website. if you want to learn more about us, I'm highly recommending you go to smartelections.us, and you can sign up for our mailing list there. And I will go ahead and put that into the chat, although probably you can find it even if I don't put that comment in. And I see people are here. Awesome. Some of our regulars, Virginia, a wonderful former election commissioner. Virginia, you are going to be featured in some of these videos tonight. I don't know. You might have guessed that. Mark, Catherine, George, all folks we are extremely happy to see. Wonderful to have you here. Roy Reynolds, awesome. There's our website. Please do check us out. And when you get there, I do hope if you're not signed up for our mailing list that you will do that. That's one of the best ways to stay in touch with us. Make sure that you get the information that we are trying to bring to you. And if you want to reach us, you can reach us at contact@smartelections.us. We'd love to hear from you if you really enjoyed the forum and if you learned a lot or there was something remarkable about it, the guests were informative, or our organization, the way we put the information together was something that really worked for you. That's terrific. And you could also just put that in the chat if you have positive comments for them. For us, we do grab them out of the chat. We put them, in our newsletter and online. It helps us a lot to just encourage more people to come and join us. So if you have positive things to say about the forum, please do go ahead, put them in the chat or email them to us. Anything that you want to describe about guests, content, how our work is really out there. We're really pushing the boundaries and making sure that we don't we don't just sit on the sidelines and say like, well, maybe that didn't go so well, but not much we can do about it. We're not like that. We're the Smart Elections people. We're out there in front, like, saying, hey, we need to get it together. We need to have a functioning, inclusive democracy. So if you like the way we're out there fighting the fight, you can talk about that too. And again, if you have things that you would like improved, suggestions, contact@smartelections.us. Let us know. Benny, anything else?
No, we can take it. Give us your feedback. We like it.
Okay, let's rock and roll. We are going to talk about audits. Audits are how we check that the votes are counted accurately. Do you want to just say a little bit, Benny, about Benny is an election commissioner in Shelby County, Tennessee. Why are audits important, Benny?
Well, if you think about it, audits, most people take it as a bad word. You think about finances, but audits are a check control system to make sure that what is believed to have happened is documented and can be proven to have happened. So if you take that in elections, if you hand over $2 billion of government resources overnight, you probably want to check to make sure that you gave it to the right person.
Yeah, it's how we know that the election is counted accurately. Mm-hmm. And we're going to start with this is what I want to start with. Okay. One of the reasons that you want to make sure that the election is counted accurately is because it's possible that the election could be incorrect. And that could happen through mistakes, and it could also happen through hacking. And we went to the Senate, Benny and I did, and along with some of our other colleagues, and we did presentations for Senate staff showing them how elections can be hacked. We did this in November of 2019. And so I'm going to start with the clip that shows Benny at the Senate demonstrating how to hack an election.
If we picked a volunteer.
Right? So I think you'll enjoy remembering this one, Benny. It was fun. Did you enjoy being up there in the Senate?
I did. We had a ball.
We did. Okay. Let's see.
This race is a governor's race. It's, if you guys look at the total, Bill Haslam has 38,000. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, can you blow it up?
I'll zoom in. He has 38,212 votes, and this is the representation of the real totals. This is actually what actually happened in Shelby County. Well, what was reported in Shelby County. So do a screenshot so we can compare it. Yeah, I'll do a screenshot of it.
You can basically change the entire roster if you want, right, Bennett?
Yeah, I can change everywhere where there's more than one candidate. for sure.
So should we pick our person now? Is it
We're gonna
time?
pick our person.
Okay, so we need a volunteer from the audience who would like to be the person who gets to pick who's going to be governor.
Does anybody want to be dirty?
I see somebody back
Okay.
there. Raise your hand.
We have a criminal in the midst.
Okay, come on up.
We're kindred spirits today.
Someone's got to make a sacrifice.
Yeah, we're all dirty.
All right. So do I come over
Okay.
to you?
Just take a look at
Well,
the screen.
let's take a look.
And you can use my mic here.
So these are the totals. This is basically what people in Shelby County see and anybody across that universe. So we're gonna work for the governor's race. Who would you like the winner to be?
Well, I really think the name Basil is interesting, so we're going to go with Basil.
Oh, he's only got 219 votes. You think we can pull that off? Basil is like a seasoning or something. Like we'll season his votes to make him the winner. Okay. So I'm gonna open fraction magic. It is largely unnoticeable. It is running. It's in the top right corner, and you can't see it. I mean, you can try to see if you see it. So the way I designed the program is to kind of hide in plain sight. So just watch my cursor, though. If you follow my cursor. You see it change? Can you see it went from a you see it went from all right, so I'm gonna type this code in that brings up, now everything you're gonna see, they're gonna be in black boxes. I did this in collaboration with blackboxvoting.org, so I made everything in black boxes so you know what is not in the application and what is the application that I designed. So I'll open it up. And it's basically reading the voting database to tell me everybody's running. So these are the options. Again, this is what Appel was explaining, that once a person get in, they can just hijack the system and take over. So I think you said Basil. Okay, so let's take, we'll make Joe Kirkpatrick come in second place. And you said Basil is going to be the winner. So Joe Kirkpatrick is, he's got a low vote total too, so he's gonna have a good night too. So basically, these are the allocation rules that I preloaded these allocation rules. So each precinct, each polling location, he is going to win 37% of the total. It's like 20 candidates in the race, so that's enough to declare him the winner. And Joe Kirkpatrick is going to get 46% of everything that remains. And this one has some complexity in there where you can see it, where I'm changing the allocation rules, because it's got to mimic realistic results, right? And it's pretty realistic. So we're going to come out of this, and I'll open the program again because now I'm going to run it, and I'm going to inject those allocation rules into 80,000 votes, 77,000 votes. All right. So I'll run it again. This time I'm going to type a different code. And if you guys want to look at this thumb drive, it's going to hum. I always use the thumb drive because everybody says, well, it's a thumb drive. We checked it. No, that sounds good, but everybody's got to use some type of media to do something. So this thing is going to hum for about maybe 10 seconds, but it's going to go through the whole thing like a peanut butter sandwich. So I'm going to type the code in. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5 1,000, 6 1,000, 7 1,000, 8. So 8 seconds didn't make me look bad, and this is an ethical swap. So I know y'all, I'm not a thief. I'm representing one, but I'm not a thief. All right, so everything is still up. So now we got to see what the new totals are, right? So let's close this report, but not close the application. So let's just preview the next batch of results. All right, so we now have a new winner. And our winner is going to be Basil.
I don't know if you guys could see that. I might just roll it back for a second right there. Can you guys see Basil went from 200 votes up to 28,000 votes, and now he won the race. It took Benny 8 seconds.
No, it didn't. That was a lady. Who is that lady? We need to have her arrested.
So that is one reason that we need audits, is because, as it turns out, there are even applications built into voting machine programs that actually make it much easier to manipulate them, right? The program that you found there, Benny, was actually part of the official program.
Correct.
Didn't want to
You
amplify
want me to
on
say
that.
more? Yeah, it's bad. It's all bad. Everything in there is bad. We need audits. It's funny to look at again. I mean, I guess I forget sometimes that we do kind of a roadshow where we show people that election equipment is not as secure as, or even not even secure. It doesn't perform its basic duties as well as we think that they do. So it's just not a good idea anymore to trust them.
Well said. Okay, we're going to switch out interpreters now. Alana, thank you so much. We'll see you in a bit. Okay.
See you, Alana.
And we are going to bring on Emilio. And Emilio, do you want to say good evening and do a visual description?
Hello, my name's Emilio. I'm a male, bald, dark features with a beard, wearing black clothing in front of a beige wall.
Nice.
Thank you so much for being with us. Okay, so we are going to move on. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is hand count paper ballots. We're going to talk about a number of different types of audits, but this is actually from the documentary that I made. I released it was my first documentary that I directed in 2008. And this is a little clip from it that just talks about hand count audits, which is one type of audit, and why especially they're needed no matter what type of video machine, what type of voting machine you have, whether it's optical scan or touch screen, you still need audits.
Optical scan, you have a piece of paper where you fill in the oval, similar to your SAT test. There's still concerns about optical scan systems. We've seen them hacked down in Leon County, Florida, and we've seen errors with optical scan systems. In the 2006 primary up in Potawatomi County, Iowa, you could flip the results of like 9 elections.
The electronic machines made by ES&S had miscounted every race on the ballot.
The 10% sample doesn't give you much confidence.
It doesn't give me much confidence. It may give someone that's really hot with statistics confidence. We want every single vote counted, and counted accurately the first time.
If what people really trust are the hand counts, why don't we just do the hand counts in the first place?
Sounds fine by me. And most of the countries around the world do exactly that.
In New Hampshire, it is in 45% of our towns.
I'm Dennis Markovich. We're in the Wilton Town Hall building. It's a hand count town, paper ballots. There'd be 4 people sitting opposite each other. I'm one of them. I would look at the ballot and I would read it. This person is watching me read it, verifying that that's what I said. Then the person over here has a tally sheet and puts a check mark. The other person sitting there is observing that that person put the check mark in the right place.
So there's 4 people
4
making
people
sure
per ballot.
that each vote is counted correctly.
Yes.
Do you have a hard time getting those people?
No. People want to do it.
There are problems with hand-counted elections just as there are problems with electronically counted elections. What's ultimately important is that whichever process you do, it be open, it be observable, and people have faith in the results that you get.
So we're going to show
By people looking at those ballots.
Sorry, we're going to show another clip now. And this is a clip that always frustrates me. It is from a wonderful presentation that a very excellent and top security expert, Professor Andrew Appel from Princeton, did. And the presentation overall, I have no qualms with, but he does describe hand counted audits as laborious and slow. You'll hear him. And there is a kind of a...
Is by people.
Just trying to hold off on that starting. There is a sort of bias in the academic security community against hand count audits. Would you say, Benny?
Yeah, Appel was on the same video with us when we were in the Senate. So he's a friendly. So it's just his opinion.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan. I'm going to play you this one clip, and it's sort of a demonstration of how there is kind of a bias against hand count audits.
Recount is by people looking at those ballots. It's more difficult to hack people, especially since the people doing a recount are usually in teams of 2 or 3 that represent more than one party and candidate. But a hand recount of the entire election is laborious and slow.
So that's it. That's the reference, laborious and slow. And now we have a guest who doesn't think that hand count audits are laborious and slow. This is Virginia Martin, and she is a former election commissioner.
She does them right. Yeah. Okay.
What?
Yeah, that's right. She does them all the time.
She is no longer an election commissioner,
Right.
but when she was for 11 years, they did full hand count or modified full hand count audits every election, every race, or every contested race, and they learned how to do them very quickly and efficiently. And that's something that's really good for us all to be aware of, that a hand count audit is possible and it can be done efficiently. If it takes practice, as something that she told me repeatedly, it got easier over time, but it certainly can be done. And this was actually from a small breakout session that we had, but I think it's a really nice way that she described a number of things that are really necessary for a good hand count to take place.
For 11 years, Democratic election commissioner in Columbia County, New York. We're a relatively small county. We've got about, how many voters do we have now? I guess about 47,000 voters right now. And 10 years ago, we instituted optical scanning of paper ballots. It was the first time New York State had ever done any optical scanning. We'd always had lever machines before. And my counterpart and I decided that we weren't comfortable with relying on the results that the computer told us. So we each wanted to know for ourselves what the results really were. So we decided that we were going to hand count the ballots. And that's what we did. New York State has a law that says that you have to hand count a certain amount of ballots. 3% of the machines that are deployed in your county have to be hand counted 100%. And that wasn't enough for us. It didn't seem like, and it's not an audit that gives you high confidence. And it didn't give my counterpart and me high confidence. So we started counting all the ballots. And that's what we did the first election. The next election, we decided we didn't really need to count all the ballots, but we still counted a whole lot. And then with every election after that, we refined our processes and decided just which ballots, which races we needed to count. And frankly, we decided that we would count any race that anybody wanted us to count. And that wasn't a problem at all. And we refined the process so that it was easy. It didn't take very long. It wasn't that hard, and it didn't cost very much.
And I want to give people an idea of when we say that like 3% of the ballots isn't really a good amount of ballots to count. I want to give people an idea of just how little that can be. Say, for example, in Columbia County, how many machines approximately did you have?
We were deploying 33 machines.
So 3% of the machines turned out to be how many machines?
One.
And
that missed a lot of races.
And I want to just ask one question about sort of the way that you wound up doing the hand counts, Virginia. Did you do them in the precinct that night, or did you do them centrally? And can you explain a little bit what the difference would be?
Right, we did them centrally. What we did was we decided that we needed to get all the ballots back to the Board of Elections. We knew that, especially the first election that we did this, it would have been a massive undertaking to figure out how to get all the ballots counted at the precincts, and who was going to count it, and who was going to oversee it, who was going to, make up the rules and make sure that everything was done properly, and it was just going to be a long day for all those many counters or inspectors or whoever it was that we hired to do this. And there was no way for my counterpart and I to oversee that at all those different poll sites. So
right, you would have had to have a separate team hand counting in every single precinct, or train your workers who had already been there all day to then count, which also would be exhausting.
Exhausting, absolutely exhausting.
Okay.
Right, and we didn't want to do that, and we wanted to have control over it. So what we did was we decided that we were going to be very, very cautious about getting all the ballots, all the election materials back to the Board of Elections that night. bipartisanly, and this was a key part of our process. We put together bipartisan, we call them ballot catcher teams, that would each one would meet at a different poll site at 9 o'clock. And as soon as the election inspectors were done with the election and they had everything tied up in a nice bow and, you know, all the security tags and seals were properly on, the election inspectors would hand off all the election materials, including the ballots, to this bipartisan team called ballot catcher team. And that team would get into one vehicle. They had to ride together. And that was interesting because it was a Democrat and a Republican, right? So, and they did. They learned to ride with each other and spend the evening together. And they would maybe go to another poll site and then pick up materials from there, and then maybe another. And then they would wind up at the Board of Elections with materials, including ballots, from all the poll sites they had visited. And at the Board of Elections, they'd be met by another set of ballot catchers, bipartisan, who would look at everything they had brought, check it all in, and then as soon as it was checked in, it was instantly whisked off to a double locked, very secure room where it stayed all night long until the next day.
So that's chain of custody.
Chain of custody, yeah.
Do you want to talk about just how important that is, Benny?
Yeah, that's one thing they absolutely nailed. Chain of custody is really going to give you your assurances. People who are in the chain are usually under oath. So typically you would probably want to see like a sheriff or something, someone who's already under oath to be the person that's transporting the ballots. We know from Florida, Tim Canova took like a picture of a rental truck and like a random person in a car with a bag full of ballots. That's an example of something that isn't chain of custody. So Virginia, she absolutely nailed it with you know, the Republican and the Democrat getting in the car. I don't trust you. You don't trust me. We're riding to the polling place. So I think that was a great example of chain of custody.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually going to show some of her paperwork here that, let's just see if this is coming up. Yeah, so one of the things that Virginia shared with us when she did that small breakout session was just some of the protocols and paperwork that they had developed. This is so important, and we're going to get into that. We had a question in the chat about the Arizona audit, and one of the things that you'll see critiqued about the Arizona audit was that they really didn't have knowledge in advance. They weren't trained in advance. They kind of made things up as they went along, and it caused a lot of apprehension and understandable concern. One of the things that Virginia Martin and her counterpart there in Columbia County did was they really had a plan. It was a lot of training, and people knew in advance how the process was going to work. And they developed paperwork and things to make that go smoothly. So you can see here, you've got this ballot catcher document. I love it. It's got the name of the people who are carrying the ballots, their cell phone number, where they are, the vehicle they're in. And then you can see that it just goes below, and it has the routes, and it's, you know, it's very, very thoroughly documented. And then she had the same thing for the actual process. Ballots are tallied in groups of 50. Is that, let me see. Yeah, you're coming along with me here. Good, you're seeing it also. This is, and so they would go through the 50 and then, and make sure that there's all kinds of checks and balances in their process. So one of the things that they make sure of is that if any of the vote counts do not match the number of ballots, the tally is redone until the discrepancy is resolved. Now, I know that's one of the things that came up in Arizona that just astounded me when I heard it, was that they weren't actually reconciling ballots. Benny, I know you were there when we talked about that.
Yeah, you do everything in accordance with the statutes, state law. They actually had it was a rigorous process. If you count a batch of 50, and if the threshold was if 2 people disagreed, then you had to recount it. And they had a table of 3 people, and if 2 people disagreed, then if 3 people disagreed, then you have to recount it. Or they had it where it was more rigorous. But when you hear that there is a number that doesn't match, you would think that you would go until it does match. But they were doing what was in accordance with Arizona state law.
All right, but what I was talking about is the actual reconciliation, the number of actual ballots. They weren't actually counting, as I understand it, the number of ballots and reconciling them and making sure that each batch did have like the number that they thought it had.
No, they weren't. No,
There was
they
no
weren't.
ballot
No, they weren't.
reconciliation process. And then
No,
here,
the actual batches in per box. No, I don't think they had a process to do that.
right. So Virginia developed a very strict ballot reconciliation process. And then also there's some other things in her notes here that you'll see didn't happen. And there was a lot in Arizona and there was critique about that. You'll see here, I'm going to blow this up and make sure that you can see it. I think you can see that pretty big. At no time does any counter make any mark on a voted ballot. The exception will be to indicate a void ballot by writing on the reverse in red ink. And I know there were concerns that people at the Arizona Audit actually like had pens. And here you'll see in her notes, counters must not use marking implements such as pens to point to anything on a ballot. So you see there that they've got very good protocols that are designed from the beginning to set down the rules and make sure that there are boundaries and things are implemented correctly. And that's one of
this is probably what we should refer to when there are a lot of counties that just don't. There's a term called SOP, Standard Operating Procedures. So this is how they enforce the chain of custody. They had a detailed operating procedure that gave every scenario that they anticipated that would happen during the transition of the ballots and the counting of the ballots and what to do. So everyone is clear that if you see anything that is counter to what is written, then you know what the recourse is. So hats off to Virginia. I remember her in Philly. I remember just looking at some of the stuff that she had, how detailed it was. And I asked as a commissioner, like I'm begging to get standard operating procedures, and it's hard to accomplish, especially in government.
And we're just going to switch out interpreters. We're going to give Emilio a break, and we're going to get Alana back with us. Yeah, and we have some
Bye, Emilio. She just cut you off, man.
No, he's coming
back.
Right?
Is this right, Alana?
Did he get it? Is that correct? Oh, he's like, more or less. Okay. We have some questions. Benny, curious, did you watch any of the Arizona Audit? And if so, did you form any opinions? And I'm just going to put a pin in it before you answer that, because we are going to get to the Arizona Audit. So just want you to know, Roy, you're being heard. And we will get to those questions. And also wanted to put up this very strong endorsement from Matt Lucene. A full hand count should be mandatory after each election in order to verify the results. Cybersecurity is a cutting edge concern and is not something I want to worry about during an election. So we have a lot of passion about hand count audits, and that they really need to be done. And I tend to be in that camp, I will say. I like to see hand count audits, although I know sometimes they are a challenge. So we're gonna, I wanna show you a few more things. Wonderful comments for Virginia in the chat, love that. So I wanna show you also, this is one of my absolute favorite techniques that almost nobody talks about. And this is from Karen McKim, who was a former coordinator in Wisconsin election integrity. And they developed this really interesting technique there. You can use it for risk limiting audits. You can use it for full hand count audits. And it's basically just a transparency technique that really allows you to, everybody in the room, to really see what's going on. This is just a really quick clip where she talks about it.
We wanted to demonstrate risk limiting auditing in Wisconsin in 2014, before most people had even heard of it, since Commission had already recommended it.
And you were working with the Wisconsin Election Integrity.
Yes, Wisconsin Election Integrity. That's the we. In this case, it's citizens. Officials we could never get officials interested in it. Still don't. Anyway, we wanted to do these public demonstrations in the hopes that we could convince election officials to pay attention to auditing. But getting the paper ballots was way too expensive. But we can't do a RLA demonstration, a risk limiting audit demonstration, without doing a hand count of some sort. So we got the digital ballot images and developed this, and none of us had ever seen a hand count that was in any way transparent enough to satisfy us as observers. So we said, we're going to develop a new way to hand count that's very, very transparent. And so basically what this is we decided that if we just projected the ballots one at a time up on a screen, we could give everyone in the room one of these little handheld click counters, and they could count the votes as they go by. Let me see. Yeah, we rapidly worked out that people only need to see the ballot for half a second, so you could keep it going by pretty fast. But let me see. Oh, come on. Trying to advance my slide. Okay. Yeah, you can have many, many people in the room. And what we did was we would designate 2 official counters, and they would each count for one of the candidates. And every candidate had to have 2 people counting their votes. And every single person only counts for one candidate. You can't count all the votes at once. And then the ballots would go by and they'd click count. And at first we stopped at every 25 ballots. And then the 2 pairs would read it out. You know, for Paul Soglin, I got 13 votes. For Paul Soglin, I got 13 votes. And then we would record it. And this was the second time we did this. We would record the subtotals over on that flip chart over there. But anyway, yeah, there's no functional limit on the number of observers. As big a room and as big a screen as you can get, and I think I have a box now of 80 click counters, and you just hand out the click counters, and everyone can count, and they can hear what the counters are announcing as their totals, and see them recorded, and then they can check it against their own. And I mean, this way you get the full transparency. You know the hand count is being accurate.
And I just love that technique. Have you ever seen them do that, Benny?
No.
It's so
you know,
great.
I got introduced to one when I got developed one. I thought that was through you. But it just reminded me of going into Costco. I mean, when you walk into Costco, they always have the clickers, and they keep track of everybody who goes in and comes out.
I did one of these with scrutineers, actually, where they had the ballots up and we were clicking, and it's just great.
It's pretty easy.
You just have to concentrate on the candidate that you're supposed to be counting. And every time you see a vote for your candidate, you click. And so say you do 25 or 50, and then you stop there, and there'll be at least 2 people clicking for each candidate. And then you compare notes like, I got 20, did you get 20? And if so, if everybody got the same number, then you write those numbers down. Again, that can be projected large so everybody can see it. And then you can move on to the next batch. And actually, they were doing this in the New York City. They recounts that they did recently for the November election. They had, I'm pretty sure it was the November election. They had a very close vote, for example, in Harlem, and they're mandated now in New York to do a hand recount. No, it must have been the primary because it was ranked choice voting. So it must have been in June. They did a hand recount of one of the races, the city council races. And they actually had to hand recount each round because it was ranked choice voting. And they used document projectors, and they had like the tally sheets up big on the wall so everybody could see it. We're actually going to do a special program and talk about that recount because it was actually done really well, and observers were able to actually even check the counts, and when they found mistakes, it was corrected. It was really well done. So this idea of keeping the tally screens and the actual ballots really big on the wall is a really important part of very transparent audits, and can be incorporated in almost every type of audit.
It's also important to note that they had the digital ballot images. This is a fight that I've been a part of for a very long time. I think it's one of the most critical pieces of an election. They didn't have to get the ballots. They could just use the images. For the computers, when they count them, as I would quote Dr. Shiva, he said the images are the ballots. For the computer, that's what the ballot uses to create everything about the election. So those are actually ballots. And I think Dane County, Wisconsin, I think they publish them not right away, but they publish them online. So it is entirely possible to use these images to recount an election if you had to.
Right. Although it's very important to then go, if you find discrepancies, to look at the paper ballots.
The actual ballots, yes.
Yeah, and we know that digital ballot images can be altered and that it's very important to refer back to the paper ballots, that that's part of it. But
Yeah.
we're fighting in New York also to get the digital ballot images. And for
Mm-hmm.
people who don't quite know what that is, when you have a modern day scanner, the modern scanners, they take an actual photograph of the ballot
Selfie.
as it's going through the scanner. It takes an image of the ballot. It's called a digital ballot image. That is actually how the machine counts. The machine does not count from the paper. The machine counts from the image. So those are that's data that many of us are fighting to get. We're going to keep us moving forward here. We are going to take a little break from content and talk about, you guessed it, fundraising.
Fundraising.
Talk about money. And that is because raising money is how we are able to do everything we do for you. That is what keeps our organization afloat. And
We need like sound effects. I can hear money, 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 money playing around right now.
those funds go to pay our staff, to pay for all of the streaming software for the computers and drives that we use to do videos and documentaries. We're trying to bring more people on board, a social media person. We need an accountant, actually. We need people to build this organization out, and we are especially thinking forward to the midterm elections and what kind of a structure and volunteer staff organization we're going to need. And we need funding for that. Our goal actually is to raise $120,000. We are trying to raise $45,000 by the end of this year from crowdfunding. And I'll show you how we're doing. We're actually doing pretty good. I'm excited to say that let me see, share. We have raised, I believe, close to 20,000, or we may have just passed 20,000 because I just saw that we had some more. Our website looks like there's more funds came in than even when we started the show, which is very exciting. So I think I have our arrow up there. This is on our website. When we started the show, we were almost at 20,000, but I know now I'm looking at the website where we're actually fundraising, and I can see that we raised about another $200 since we started the show. I think I can share that screen with you. This is where you're going to go if you actually would like to make a donation, and we would welcome your donations, whether you have $5 each month to donate. That is very, very helpful. Or if you really are able to make a donation of $500 or $1,000, we have had donations of those size, and we really, really appreciate it and very much need them. So,
and it's December, so if you guys looking to burn down before the tax year ends, we're a good place to park it. It is tax deductible.
Right, absolutely. And I can show you, this is what it's going to look like when you go to that link. You are going to see our current crowdfunding. So our current crowdfunding, we're trying to raise another 25,000 on top of the 20,000 that we raised so far this year. So that's the current one that we have up, and you can see that we're almost at $1,300 now. It would be great even if we raise like another $300 to $500 during this forum. We know that we could do that. If we could get that from 1,200 up to 1,700 or 1,800 by the end of the forum, that would be incredible. We would be very, very grateful. And as Benny said, it is tax deductible. Maybe someone can put into the chat if they already donated. Many of you have already donated. So please go ahead and put into the chat, I donated. I see multiple people here that I know have donated. And then maybe that'll encourage somebody who hasn't donated yet to go ahead and join us donating. Royal, thank you so much.
Royal is donating.
Royal has already donated, and I will say we're very grateful he's donating again. So please, if you'd like to join him, please do go to that link that I put in the chat and make a tax deductible donation so that we can continue to do this work. It is incredibly important that we be able to protect, monitor, and verify our election results. And that is why we need your help. Virginia Martin did donate. Totally grateful for that. If you actually scroll down the page, you'll see that we have we're starting a dedication page, and Virginia actually made a really lovely dedication. So this was in honor of a friend of hers, in memory of Gina Holmes Moore. Gina Holmes-Moore was maximally engaged in our Hudson community, and that engagement extended to running for and holding office and appointed positions, as well as serving as a poll worker. And she's very sorely missed. And that was a wonderful dedication that Virginia Martin made when she made her donation. And we welcome you to make a dedication at the same time that you make the donation. And we are creating a memory, a hall of democracy. I believe we've called it Honorary Hall of Democracy Champions. That's what we're calling it. So I want to get back to the program, but I do hope that you will continue to donate. Mark Shaw donated. I know quite a few people on this call have already donated. So even if you don't have a chance, even if you're not comfortable donating right now during the program because you want to watch the program, please do remember after the forum to go ahead and make that donation. We really, really do need your help. And your support, and we're very grateful for it. And you're the hero, really. You're the hero that allows us to keep doing this work. So we have a few more minutes. I think it's time to switch out. We're going back to Emilio for ASL interpretation. So thank you so much to Alana. We're so grateful for you being with us today. And let's get Emilio back on. Thank you so much for joining us again. And there's a few more things that I want to cover. So I want to cover risk limiting audits because they're really a bit of a buzzword. And we have this clip from Stephanie Singer, who actually was with us at the Senate and talked about risk limiting audits there. But we're going to play a clip from when she was on the forum, and she's going to talk to us about risk limiting audits and just sort of what's good about them and maybe some of the things that are a little bit complicated about them. So this is Stephanie Singer, and she is a consultant with Verified Voting.
Limiting audits are like this buzzword right now. Everybody's like, oh, let's do some risk limiting audits. So let's just start out with like the basics, like what are they? Can you just sort of break it down and explain it to us?
So when you use computers to help count ballots, there are some advantages to that. One is that computers can count very fast, and computers are very good at checklists. They're very good at following instructions, whatever instructions they happen to have been given. So there are a lot of reasons that it's very appealing to use computers to help count ballots.
The big thing, I think it comes down to size. Sometimes we have these huge jurisdictions. We have jurisdictions like New York, which is about 4.5 million active voters. I know LA is bigger than that. It might be 13 million active voters. Huge, huge jurisdiction. So when you have these huge jurisdictions, sometimes the idea of trying to count or audit everything by hand becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a large jurisdiction, even in Orange County, California, where I helped with a risk limiting audit a few years ago, in their warehouse, they had over 1 million pieces of paper, because not only do they have a lot of voters, a lot of their ballots had more than one piece of paper. So it's easy. I mean, and 1 million is a very, very big number. I mean, even imagining counting up to 1 million, it takes you a long time.
California has a lot of referendums also.
Yep.
60, 70 referendums sometimes on one ballot. That's a lot of votes to count.
Yeah, it's useful to have to use statistics to build confidence, even if you can't build perfect confidence. So a risk limiting audit is a way of looking not at every single ballot, but at enough that you can have good statistical confidence that if something had gone wrong, you would have caught it.
Right. And now we're gonna talk about 3 different kinds of risk limiting audits. And I'm gonna show a video now that's gonna show one type, and then we'll have you back to talk about with us a little bit more.
With so much at stake in our world, it's important that we have elections we can trust. Unfortunately, computer programs can be hacked or sometimes get the count wrong by accident. So we need to routinely verify the machine count with humans. It's called a risk limiting audit, or RLA, and it's math. The risk limiting audit is like giving a DNA test to an election. An RLA gives us confidence that the reported tally declared the true winner. It works by statistical sampling. Instead of asking random voters how they voted in an exit poll, We ask a random sample of the ballots what votes they contain. This random sample gives us a micro picture of the entire contest. And here's where the math comes in. Instead of counting all the ballots, you count just the right amount of ballots that give us a statistically accurate picture of the final results. In this example, we take a random sample of all the ballots cast. The results show a relatively similar ratio of winning to losing votes. We have an RLA match, a random sample confirming the outcome. But suppose our random sample turns out to be very different from the reported totals. We have an RLA mismatch. This means we need to randomly sample a larger number of ballots and/or possibly move to a full hand count. Remember, a sufficient number of truly randomly sampled ballots will always give a trustworthy report of the election outcome. But if the contest is close with a small margin of victory, the RLA must randomly sample more ballots to have confidence in the outcome. In a close contest with a small margin of victory, an RLA requires a larger number of ballots polled to achieve confidence. An RLA is far superior to a conventional audit where a fixed percentage of precincts are examined. There, officials are not actually checking whether the election results are correct. They're just spot checking the accuracy of a few machines. Ultimately, efficiency is the major benefit of RLAs. Voters are getting statistically dependable results without checking large numbers of ballots, and elections are using fewer resources. Please visit our website for more information on RLAs.
Okay, so that is what we have time for to really discuss in terms of risk limiting audits. And I will also, while we're going forward, put some links in the chat from Verified Voting. They do have some really good explainers about risk limiting audits, the different types. We referred there. What they're doing is a ballot polling risk limiting audits. There's also risk limiting audits where you can actually check specifically on the actual ballot against, that check how the machine counted one individual ballot and count and check multiple ballots. That's a different type of risk limiting audit. So I'll put some information in the chat, but we're going to move on and we're going to look now at the Arizona audit because I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to talk about that. It was one of the most controversial audits this year. And we had a couple guests on, one, Ray Lutz, who was actually there and actually kind of explained to us some of what was going on. And then another guest in this clip, Dwight Shellman, who is a election official from Colorado, who was extremely very, very worried about the Arizona audit and did not feel that it was trustworthy. So we had kind of two perspectives on it. And so this is
on
the floor unless you provide, get rid of your cell phone, purse, backpack or, belt pack, whatever, what have you, even a smartwatch. So nothing is allowed out there, and including any pens and pencils and other things like that, pieces of paper. So it is very, very tight that way, even maybe more so than other audits that I've seen. They have over, if you can see, I can't point it with my pointer, but if you just look underneath the banner that says Smart Elections on the right, you will see the pallets of ballots in a big long row, and then additional pallets in the next area of this chain link fenced area. So within these cameras, we can actually see all of the ballots in boxes. And that's actually better than a lot of the officials that I've seen where they have the ballots in the back somewhere. They say, we're going to go pull a sample. And then they go back and they come back out. Okay, yeah, there's another camera view of the pallets of ballots. And you can see there's a lot. And then some that they're looking through. Yeah, if you can go back to camera 5 again, it might be, so I can point out a few more things there. Go ahead and play it. So if you see the people in different colors, first of all, they have 4 colors, very colorful. You don't usually see this much color in an election audit, but they have these 4 colorful teams. The one in the front here is yellow, green, blue, and then way in the back is red. Kind of a paint color, actually. And these teams, initially they had only 5 round tables per team. Now they've increased that to 12 after they realized that they were so very far behind. But if you notice, there's really only 5 teams still working here in the yellow group. And if you take a look at this one kind of a little bit to the left of center, you can see the carousel going around with these easels on it.
Let's see if we can get a close-up of that.
You can't, well, yeah, maybe you can go to a different one. But basically, that's about as close as they get. Maybe, yeah, I don't think that's better. Why don't you go back to camera 5?
You can see the carousel going around there. Can't you see it?
I think I can point out better on camera 5.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No problem.
Okay, so what they have is this sort of carousel thing, which is a bit new in terms of what I've seen. And so if you watch now, there's a person standing just to the left of the table, the carousel, and he's putting a ballot on the easel. Then there's 3 people seated in yellow. Actually, one person kind of has red on, I guess, the sweater. But there's a person in orange, which is, I have my token orange shirt on here as one of the inspectors. You would wear that color shirt if you were just observing or watching. And people can volunteer to work a shift and come in there and watch it.
So where do the observers stand when they're watching, Ray?
You can walk anywhere you want.
Oh, really? So the observers can walk anywhere they want, but the press has to stay up in that little box.
Right. Well, if you want to come onto the floor, then you can't bring cameras or anything else, and they can't to record things and that sort of thing.
Right. I actually think that's a problem. As a member of the press, I think you really want to let the press take pictures, document everything. That's one way to increase transparency. When I filmed the Wisconsin recount, they let me go anywhere I wanted. I filmed close up on the ballots as they were being counted, as long as I didn't talk to anyone or touch anything or disturb anyone, make it, any type of a fuss. I was able to silently just document the process. It's just they're too far away, in my opinion. I don't think they're really that useful as they could be if they were close up, so you could really see what was happening. This one is pretty good. You can see it going around there.
Yeah. So there you go. So you can imagine if you were sitting there and if you put yourself in the position of this guy, he sees the ballot, looks up. Now he has to find it on his tally sheet, get it marked, hurry up. Now look up, look at the next one. Now look down. I mean, that is it's a brutal experience. You really have no way to take any sort of slow down. Sometimes they'll stop it and say, I need to go back. Now what they do is they go through 50 ballots and they compare the results amongst the 3. And if they all agree, of course, everything's fine. But if one is off by just a few, I think it's 3 or less, then they take the other 2. And if if they're all off, of course, they have to redo it. But if it's more than that, then they redo it as well. So they have to go back and just do that set again.
So definitely the data entry is a weak link there, because we all know data entry is a very problematic process. We all make mistakes when we type and things like that. So normally in an audit, you never have something happening in regard to the tally that somebody else isn't observing, usually someone from a different party. And I want to just point out here, we did have a question from somebody about the process being a partisan process. Why isn't a nonpartisan group doing the count? This audit is a partisan event. And that is absolutely true, Rich. But the thing about it is that most of the elections that are held in this country are held by partisan election officials. Our elections are all, for the most part, run by partisan election officials who are members of one party or the other. And sometimes we try to balance it out where you have a Democrat and a Republican who are both supposedly in charge, but often you have counties that are dominated by one party or the other, and that's the party that controls the count. So I agree with you that it's a problem, but I think it's a problem in our entire country that our elections are run by partisan election officials.
Colorado, is almost all vote by mail. And so the Secretary of State's office has, we call it the voter intent guide, that encapsulates or captures the most common marking mistakes that voters make, and establishes, for this type of marking, this equals a vote for A, a vote for B, an invalid overvote, whatever the circumstances might be. The benefit of an objective set of standards is that those voter intent issues will be resolved in big old Denver County in exactly the same way that they're resolved in tiny little Bennett County out on the Eastern Plains. That's uniformity across the state is really important.
Right. So that's a big picture issue, in that we're not sure that there was proper training and that there's some sort of manual that these counters have been looking to. And I think it just speaks to what your main concern was from the beginning, which is that you feel like this is kind of they're making this up as they go along, or sort of figuring it out as they go along. And so you're concerned that the ultimate results are not going to be trustworthy. Is that your overall concern?
That's one concern. That concern would be alleviated if they were conducting this exercise in a manner that would ensure that anybody with access to the same information could replicate their findings. As far as I can tell, that is going to be impossible.
So now I know, Benny, you went out there and were able to observe the audit, at least for part of it. So you could hear their kind of had two perspectives. Ray Lutz, who's an election security advocate and has a lot of experience with audits, thought there were some positive parts to the audit. He thought their chain of custody was decent, and that people were able to observe. You could see this election official that we also have a really long-standing relationship, Dwight Shellman, excellent election official, very hardworking, honest, transparent, works very hard to implement the risk-limiting audits that they do in Colorado, was very, very critical of the Arizona audit. So you have sort of, some different perspectives there. Did you want to weigh in on that, Benny?
Yeah, sure. I stayed out there for 8 days. We did the interview with these guys before I went out. I observed it as an election official. I got to work with Kim Bennett directly. I got to give him some pointers and tips of what I thought could change about the audit. They were adapting. What you see on camera though, that was okay. Like Ray was saying that you don't have time to count the ballots. Yeah, you do. I tried to do it, and it was pretty fun to see that I had enough time. You're looking at the same place all the time, and you're just doing tick marks. So there were very few times that it got off. There were places in the rest of the audit that were very much concerning, and I think that's what Dwight was talking about, and his points were just as valid as Ray's were.
About the overall protocols, things being made up as they went along, kind of lack of consistency.
Yeah, he's done it from an official perspective. Like, you can't say that this is an established process and then establish it.
Right. So the exact opposite of what we saw with Virginia Martin, which was meticulously planned in advance and instructions and thinking about all the different.
And the other young lady that we had from Michigan, who was she had the most robust processes. Yeah, this wasn't that.
Karen McKim was a government auditor for 30 years. And when she started looking into election security, she was appalled.
Yeah,
she was just like, she couldn't stand it. She's actually retired from election security now. I tried to nudge her back in the other day, and she was like, Lulu, I'm done. I'm done. I can't take it. Because she was just like, what other industry do you have where people are literally not even mandated to just check their results? Like, you don't see that in banking.
They can't do that anywhere. No other profession can you do this.
It's tough. And we have a really good comment here. I want to take this about what happened with the Georgia risk limiting audit, because these audits really, a lot of them have holes in them that you could drive a Mack truck through. So this is, I mean, it's all about the details. These audits are, the devil is in the details. So here's a comment about the Georgia risk limiting audit. Except in Georgia, where several of us found numerous duplicate tabulations in the RLA. I believe meaning that actual ballots were counted twice, like sent through scanners twice or counted twice. I believe that was one of the problems there. And finally, the governor has confirmed the inconsistencies. Yes, we would love for you to share the report. Alana, please put it in the chat for people if you have it. And I love Royal's comment here too. These are just great comments that we're getting in the chat. It is important to have the support of all parties during the audit. That is one reason why I have to say, I will swing it back to support, why it is important for you to support Smart Elections. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, and we are interested in fair elections. And so we don't take sides. We don't get involved in who's right, who's wrong. We're interested in fair elections, and that's another great reason to support us. So we're going a little bit past 8 because there was a lot of content that we really want to get in. I'm going to go ahead and play. This is a sneak peek. We're trailer or sneak peek video. We're putting together a video to encourage people to donate, and so this is just this is the first part of it. And I think we have it here. Yeah, okay. This is this is us letting you know why it's important to donate to us.
I'm Lulu Freistadt. I'm a founder and the executive director of Smart Elections. We are an innovative, nonpartisan nonprofit. We serve U.S. voters, advocates, election officials, and the general public. I'm here to ask for your significant support for something that affects every part of our lives, our elections. The 2020 election wasn't just a race for the White House, it was an ordeal that revealed deep flaws in our electoral process. While many people were surprised by what happened, I was not, because I had been investigating and creating documentary pieces about our elections for years. My investigations have received more than 4 million views online and received a Best Documentary Award. I knew our elections were vulnerable to mistakes and hacking, and also the loss of confidence that can be even more insidious. But unlike many others who were at a loss for what to do, by 2020, I had already begun to work towards solutions. In 2019, I co-founded Smart Elections with experienced colleagues that I trust, who have a deep knowledge base of our elections and especially about the technology that we use.
So that's a little sneak peek of a video that we're working on, just to really encourage you to contribute and let you know why it's so very important. And I want to go out on a video that Benny talking about when we had our ranked choice voting, because we didn't fit this into the voting machine when we had the voting machinery, and it does sort of connect with audits and sort of how we look at the process overall. And I thought Benny just made like one of the most brilliant points that we've had on the forums about transparency and how important it is. So I just want to set it up a little bit. In New York, we had an election, a ranked choice voting election, which is a very specific type of voting where people have a variety of choices. They can rank their candidates 1 to 5. At least that was how we did it here. And the software that was used to count the votes was open source. And we had a whole forum on open source, and we had a separate forum on ranked choice voting to sort of get people up to speed on that. But Benny made this really great point about how the open source software, which means that anybody could see the code and it was open to the public, was sitting on top of closed proprietary software. And I honestly think it's just such a great point that I really, I wanted to make sure and include it. So this is Benny at the open source forum that we had.
Beginning and the end of the election integrities argument, right? We are concerned with the first round, right? IRV is, or ranked choice voting, is multiple elections. if we do not trust or have confidence in the first one, then it is not prudent to say that it's good because we had 8 more. That's the antithesis of the election integrity movement.
I
The
understand that.
solution for that is transparency. So he is offering, again, this is not conducting an election. It's using a method to figure out 8 elections that have already been conducted. If we can bring that to ES&S and Dominion and Hart, then we would be solving the actual problem that election integrity is looking for, which would be transparency in the black box of conducting the election in the first place. So you have to tackle the transparency. I say it all the time. There are these 2 P's that fight with each other: public dollars paying for proprietary software. And whenever you want to sue or do a public records request, they tell you you can't see it because it's private. That is still the exact same issue, even with this. The private stuff needs to become public and open source, like the one that he has. So that's
okay. So what you're pointing out is that the actual ES&S scanner that is scanning the ballots and creating the cast vote records is not open source, is not
none of that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you're saying we're building an open source transparent platform on top of a closed black box, and that's
right. That's a really transparent output of a opaque input.
Benny, are you laughing?
Pretty much. Yeah. That guy's funny.
I just thought it was brilliant. I just really thought you nailed it there. So I just really wanted to share that and make sure that we got that in.
Yeah.
So
we need audits until we can figure that out for sure. And after we figure it out, we still need audits.
Right. The audits, even if you have open source software,
Yeah.
you still need an audit. An open source machine can make a mistake also. There was a perfect example of that. In New York City, they had the open source software and they accidentally ran test ballots. I think 135,000 test ballots were included in the actual official count using the open source software. So they used the open source software, but they still messed up the results. So
Yeah.
audits are necessary no matter what type, when we're using computers to count votes, we need to be auditing. And actually, even if you're hand counting votes, you still need to do a recount or some type of audit because people make mistakes when they hand count too. So that was one of the brilliant things about Virginia Martin's process, was that they would run the ballots through the scanners first, then not looking at those totals, they would count the ballots by hand separately, and then they would see if they matched. And if they had problems, they would reconcile them. So that was a redundant process, which was very, very effective.
Yeah. So if you take an audit, if you just try to make it as simple as possible, you can take an assumption about an outcome. An audit's job is to either prove it, disprove it, quantify it, or clarify it. That's it. It's agnostic. It has whatever assumption you throw in there, it's going to knock all 4 of those off every time.
As long as the audit is done with best practices.
Oh, yeah,
and one
a
of the
real
things,
audit.
I think one of the most important points that we need to add here is that audits need to be done by independent agencies. And if you go back to the original guidelines established at electionaudits.org, which was a group of officials and experts that got together years ago and started really nailing down best practices for audits, it's right there in the original rules. Audits need to be done by independent organizations or individuals that do not have a stake in the process. And we rarely see that right now in US elections. Audits are mostly being done by election officials. It's like election officials auditing themselves. And the IRS doesn't come to your house and say, hey, would you just double check your results, please? They send an auditor. They have to be independent. So super. I think we've really put our full heart into this forum, really tried to give you a full spectrum of information and points of view about audits, and we hope that you've enjoyed it and learned a lot. So we're going to sign off. Please do make sure that you sign up for the next forum. We are actually trying to get Ken Bennett on. I've been back and forth doing phone tag with him. Do you want to talk about who Ken Bennett is?
I love Ken Bennett. He's my friend. He was the liaison for the Senate, and he conducted the majority of the audit. He was not in charge of the contractors, but he was his signature was on everything. So he was reasonably versed at audits. He's a former Secretary of State, very a very entrenched or well-known Republican, and he's got some serious integrity in him. I like him a lot.
So we are trying to book him for December 28th. I can't promise, but we're in conversations with him to hopefully come on the forum, and we do hope that you will sign up. I'm putting the link into the chat to make sure that you're signed up for the next forum, and you can also sign up for our movie night next Tuesday. We're going to have a very special documentary, and it is the documentary that I directed and produced called Holler Back: Not Voting in an American Town. So we do encourage you to sign up for that, and I'll put the Zoom in the chat. So that's our movie night. I know I have a banner for movie night. And so that's December.
Just give her something, Amelia.
December 21st, 7 p.m. Eastern Time here. It's our election reform movie night. And the name of the film is Holler Back: Not Voting in an American Town. And I will put the link for that into the chat. That's going to be really fun. That's the first film I made. I interviewed a lot of people who didn't vote to find out why they didn't vote, and their answers are fascinating. And then we looked into a lot of reforms that would increase participation, and that was how I got into election security, because I was like, oh my God, it's possible to hack an election, and my life was never the same after that.
Shocker.
So you're going to see my origin story in this film. I hope that you're going to join us. That's at 7 p.m. Next Tuesday night Eastern Time, and the links for that are in the chat. And then why don't you shout us out on some social media channels, Benny?
What are our social media channels?
We're on all the social media channels.
So we're at smart_elections on Twitter. It's the same thing on Instagram. And then, our Twitter handles they disappeared, but
well, if the banner goes,
put our Twitter handles up. Yeah, there they are. Yeah. So I'm at Benny J. Smith, and she's at Lulu Friesdat on Twitter. And our Instagram is smart elections, no underscore. TikTok is smart elections. And all of our prior videos are below in the YouTube links.
Absolutely. There's a playlist where you can watch all of our videos. Okay, we are way over time.
Going long.
But just having a good time with you tonight. So hopefully you're having a good time also. So we will see you hopefully back here at the next forum on December 28th. And just remember, this is what democracy looks like.
Good night, everybody.